Thank you everyone for joining. Today I have Chad Palmer from United Franchise Group, and we are going to talk about tactical SEO playbook for franchise brands, aka what do franchisors/franchisees actually need to do and have time to do to make the SEO work. So without further ado, again, my name is Madeline Park. I'm the Director of Marketing for NetSertive. Previously, I was Director of Marketing at a home services umbrella brand, and I'm also a now 4-brand multi-unit franchisee in Philadelphia. We've got about 20 locations over here. And joining me is Chad Palmer, the VP of Digital Marketing for United Franchise Group. Chad, thanks for hopping on and talking SEO today.
Thanks, Maddie. It's great to be here, and hello to everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day so far.
Totally. And I'll give you guys 1 second to screenshot that and go ahead and connect with us on LinkedIn. And of course, I have to do the spiel about NetSertive. We are a digital marketing agency for franchise brands. Here's some of our brands. We have developed our own proprietary software that automates all of the digital ads for your franchise brand and your franchisees and localizes it. I like to call us kind of like the dishwasher, where of course you don't need to automate your ads, but why wouldn't you if you have that ability? Which is really great because we're able to use our team to then take, the support off your shoulders as well. So super excited to be part of this team, actually use it with my own franchises. So, I'm speaking the truth here. So without further ado, without a proper SEO strategy, you're not going to reach your highest growth potential. SEO is what makes your website more visible. This equates to more traffic, more opportunities, and to convert prospects into customers. So the long and short of it is it's a grind, but it really is the foundation for your brand to be successful. And I was talking to a new vendor in the space about this, and they're developing their pitch to franchises. And I said, look, the deal is that you can push as much money as you want and get a bunch of leads and all this visibility. But what happens if your franchisee runs out of money? What happens if a pandemic happens and all of your budget stops? People aren't going to be able to find you unless you're constantly pushing money. So that's not a good place to be. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Chad, what are your first thoughts about SEO strategy for franchises?
Yeah, it's a great point, because like what we teach our franchisees at training schools, you kind of have two approaches for them to get leads, right? You can do SEO and SEM. So you can basically either buy the leads, you can do PPC, you can go out there that day that you open and generate traffic for keywords to bring, people to your location. And then there's the long play, which is build out your website, answer the questions, earn your way kind of up to the front of Google. You're not going to do it the first day. So you're right. It is a constant grind. You have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. The other thing that we teach is almost kind of a bigger picture approach, which is to think, everyone's getting leads from Google. There's Bing and there's Yahoo, but basically Google is the behemoth that you have to kind of serve to get the right results. So I always kind of challenge them and say, like, what is the purpose of Google? What is Google's job? Why does Google exist? And they usually say to make money. They want my money for ads and PPC. And the reality is their business model is to answer questions the best way that they can. So if you put a query into Google, or your customer puts a query into Google to find your franchise, are you providing quality content that best answers that question? In their eyes, either you are or you aren't. If your competition is, they rank higher than you. And if you do, then you rank higher than them. So you definitely can do the paid position. Like this is, I just saw you switch the slide, and this is actually 100% in lockstep with what we teach, which is you want to own that first page from top to bottom. And I would add on to here too, since we have, a lot of locations that have retail spaces, you want to be on the map as well, right? You want to be in that top 3 results in the map query as well.
Absolutely. And so this slide is actually we're a premier Google partner. which took us lots of money and lots of time to get. So
It's not
they give
cheap.
us, yeah, they give us access to, some nice slides and some stats. So this is the truth. Most of the clicks are coming from this first page. You can kind of see in the middle, and those help the paid ads. But again, we all know where the paid ads are. So when I'm searching mosquito franchise near me or apparently Clinique makeup, I'm probably not clicking on the first two because I know that's an ad. So that top 4, 5, 6 on the page are what I feel are the true answers to what I'm searching for.
Right.
And here's just another slide that Google has shared with us that users pay attention to mainly the top positions. It's not news to us, but here you can see it in real life with the heat map. The lower down on the page, the less visibility you're going to get. And of course, this is all from smartphones because the majority of them, people are on their smartphones now. And I mentioned this in another slide later, but I always say same thing with people who fight me on social media. They fight me on Page Digital. I'm like, guys, you have to be where people are. And tip, it's not on the second page of Google. Like,
Right.
I don't remember the last time I was like, oh, number 2. Like, I was like, oh, if I can't find the answer on page 1, there is no answer. There is no, what is the meaning of life? There is no answer.
Yeah.
So,
well, the meaning of life is 42.
It's 42, correct.
And the SEO joke is always the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 of Google, as we all know.
Exactly. Now people are going to find all my dead bodies. God,
I know. Hide them on page 3. You're solid.
First step is national SEO strategy. So this is franchise development and your branding as a whole. So this is where your home office is saying, your CEO or your Chad Palmers are going, hey, how are we looking for, our SEO? And the other departments are going, we make some blogs. I think we're good. I run a Moz check. So here's what it really means. So it is important. It's part of the appeal and power of a franchise. It's the brand recognition. How are you getting brand recognition? By people seeing you, which is not on the second page of Google. So your website, your franchise website holds the majority of the SEO power for your franchisees. If you think about it, they all might have their microsites, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just have, location pages within your website. But all that juice is coming from your link, your brand link. So it does have a trickle down effect for your franchisees' local SEO. If they're doing phenomenal and you're doing poorly, it's not going to flow upwards. It's always going to flow downwards. So again, if you have the power, use it. If you don't claim your brand space, a competitor will. SEO competition doesn't discriminate, meaning I'm actually working on, let me see if I can pull this up. No, I'll do it later. Working on a competition map to show you that if in the paid space, you can compete in competitor brand names. So we can say, for my Made Pro franchise, we can bid on Molly Made and then have it click over to our website. And the same thing with people who might not even be a franchisor in your space. If you are, handyman, whatever, other mom and pop shops can do keyword research, really get in there and just push you out of the way. So it doesn't matter if you're a franchise or not, or you have no competition in the space, other people can use those keywords. So you really have to take up space or someone else will. And here it is, you have to be where people are, and it's not on the second page of Google. Yeah. The higher the SEO power you have, the quicker you will grow. And I always hear from people, oh, this brand just grew by 50 units this year. This is just signed 20. They've got 100 in waiting. Yeah, well, if you want to hit that, you got to do the SEO. They have clearly mastered that. And on top of that, they are now putting on the paid digital to really crank up the gasoline on that. So the SEO, again, is that foundation for your franchise brands and where it starts for your franchisees. A lot of people get annoyed because SEO is a long game. It's relatively cheap, but can be expensive, depending on which ways you utilize it. And what I like to say to them is you really can track SEO aside from just, hey, I moved up a space on the ranking, or Google says my website's approved. Create goals for organic revenue or organic traffic, use KPIs and then measure it. So you can truly measure SEO outside of just I'm using keywords, I have a paid campaign, or I moved up a space on a page. There are ways to do that. And between the website, Facebook, Google, you have all the analytics you need to do that. So I'm going to pass it over to Chad for your
Yeah.
thoughts on all
Yeah.
of this, since you're doing it
Sure.
regularly.
Yeah. I would say I'll kind of start with the last point first, just because that is something, I talk to a lot of other companies. Like we have our 10 brands that we run. And then in the kind of franchising circles, a lot of, friends and coworkers or cohorts in the space reach out when they have challenges. And it is a business competition in that we all want the same thing, right? We all want our franchises to grow. But I'm a big believer in the transparency and educating and just helping. You'll get good things when you help other people. So one of the things that I see a lot of them don't do a good job of is creating those KPIs and measuring them. They're kind of just throwing it all up against the wall and going, well, we're doing all the things that the agency told us to do. So, and they spent all our money, so we must be doing good, right? But whether it's a lead amount or, social media improvement or whatever those KPIs are, website traffic growth, domain authority, whatever you choose to focus on, we like to do 3, because if you get where you're trying to track 5, 6, 7, 8 goals, you don't really have a goal. That's a to-do list, right? If you have 1, then okay, great, you did it. And then you went hang about the rest of the year. Like you have to have 3 almost unattainable goals, but that you could reach. We're real big believers in those stretch goals. At UFG, that's just kind of our company culture. But as individual companies, you want to push that line a little bit so that you do get good results. The other thing I would say that you had mentioned, you kind of mentioned it in that competitors are going to do it to you. I would actually say, as a business strategy, right? As you're buying keywords, some people just think about what keywords they're using, what works for their industry or their business model. I use Spy Food to go research our competitors and look and research and say, what keywords are getting them the most action? And a lot of times, Spy Food does a great job of doing this overlapping Venn diagram bubble and saying, these 1,000 keywords, all 3 of your big competitors are all using, right? Like we have Venture X. So the term co-working, guess what? All the co-working spaces are bidding and buying on co-working, but there may be some outlier keyword that your competitor is bidding on that you never thought of, your agency never thought of. And we have no problem going and putting a budget and buying that keyword. We'll buy competitor brand names to drive traffic, to our sites. Because like I said, even though I'm happy to help everybody, it's a competition. It's kind of like a race. It's like, hey, we all want to be in first place and we all want to, do what we got to do to get up there. And that it's just like you said, if you don't do it, then your next competitor will. Like someone's always coming up behind you trying to win the race. There's new brands launched every single day. And the good thing with that is a new brand, an emerging brand, they're hungry, right? If you have 100 franchise units, it's really easy to kind of let your mind kind of say, hey, things are working, we're growing every year, things are awesome. A new franchisor is like, I want to grow from 5 to 100 this year, or 5 to 50, and that's really, really aggressive goal. And they're gonna do some out of the box thinking to get there. And as larger brands and franchise companies, we have to do the same thing. We have to stay hungry. It's kind of like the Steve Jobs, quote of, always stay hungry, because if you don't, you kind of lose that fire in your belly to keep it going.
Absolutely. And so as we're talking about this, it's kind of okay, I get it. I have to do it. How do I do it? So this is the first step. And obviously you're also combining PPC, which is pay per click or search, into this. But for the purpose of, purely SEO, for Fran Dev, which ultimately, relays back into your brand as well. Because you're not really doing any consumer PPC unless you have corporate owned stores.
Right.
So for the sake of, Fran development, this is kind of an example of what you want to do on the back end to get in those leads. So you're using for keywords a mix of broad and long tail keywords. And one of the questions was, what's a long tail keyword? And it's usually typically a longer sentence. So for instance, a short tail keyword would be like dog food. A mid tail keyword is organic dog food. And a long tail would be like how to make dog food at home. And I specifically use dog food to shout out Emily Roberts from Pet Wants on here. But I want to say that, this also takes a lot of time. So for keywords, and there are tools that I show later in the slides that can help you define what your long tail, your broad, your keywords are. But the simplest thing I can say is I've seen a lot of franchises go, I'm going to take 50 keywords and bid on them all because I want the whole scale of what I do or what I potentially could do. I want to be known for that. But the more detailed and targeted you can get your keywords, the better. Because Google knows that, and Google doesn't like that. Google is only consumer friendly, so they want specific. So what do you want to be known for? That's the first question to ask yourself. And then you're going back to your website, the first place to start an audit per se, and say, okay, is my website representing these specific keywords, the specific things I want to be known for? And then kind of go on it that way. The next is national targeting. So I hear a lot of, well, I don't do SEO really because I only want to grow in a couple states, or I'm not licensed here. The fact is, with franchise development, and I'm sure Chad can attest to this, especially with budgets that aren't necessarily in the millions, is that bidding and SEO works backwards for franchise development. So usually you'd say, oh, here's my money, here's my content. I'm just going to, push it to a smaller area and it's going to be more saturated and I'm going to get more leads. That's just not the case for franchise development because it's about volume. So I always recommend go national, go North America while you're using your SEO and you're targeting, try to target as many areas as possible because you never know who lives somewhere else, who's willing to move, who has a summer house in a state that you're licensed in. So really think outside of just, this is what I want, and think more grander of, especially as you're trying to climb in Google. Google is global, and eventually you should think that way too. And we'll get more into tactical tips, but you want to continue developing content for SEO efforts, and then building a website that converts. So a little bit more into that. And when I was at my time at MadePro, I worked with a really great AMS team, and they really honed in on SEO. And one of the examples I can show you is on our MadePro franchise website. On the bottom footer, we made 2 footers that were specifically made for SEO purposes. But if you're a consumer or a franchise candidate, you would not know that. So for instance, we took franchise locations, put all of the states that we had availability in, or it might have been all 50 states, and then wrote articles about, naming some keywords in that state, right here, specific locations, and then open a cleaning business, house cleaning businesses in Massachusetts. So really folding that into educational content. So it doesn't have to be this boring SEO article versus a blog you think, your consumers will read. Because to be honest, no one's really reading a franchise blog, maybe a little bit, but not really. So, taking those blogs and making them more SEO friendly. For instance, here's another one, advice and resources. All of the articles are based around specific keywords. So invest in a cleaning franchise, grow a successful house cleaning business, cost to start a cleaning business. Those are all great articles, great keywords, great pieces of content that not only, are educational for your potential candidates, but absolutely the juice behind SEO. So that's, kind of a quick thing that you can do without saying, I have to redo my website, I have to make boring blogs that no one's going to read. There are ways to incorporate SEO juice without necessarily having to, blow everything up. So Chad, I
Yeah.
pass it over to you. What are your advice around
I'm,
this?
I'm chomping at the bit because you're talking my language. So
Yeah.
a couple things that I will just kind of tag on to that. One is thinking about the buyer journey and the intent, right, of who's coming to your website, and you're writing for them. So you're not just writing generic keywords that you're stuffing. So you shouldn't have keywords that have nothing to do with your journey just to try to get bonus traffic on there. Um, you want to get those long tail keywords along with your industry specific keywords, but you don't want to just fluff it up. You're better off. Google will serve you better if you do more of a sniper approach than a shotgun approach. And they say, this is the answer to that question. So one of the things that I like to do is I want to always target, I want to get snippets. When you think about long tail keywords, like a snippet, when someone types in a question in Google and you get that extra box that has like the 7 or 8 questions that are kind of similar to yours, but not exactly. And sometimes they're way off the mark and sometimes they're right in line, but they have a different word. We like to take the top ones, kind of reverse engineer it and look at our competitor and say, how can we better answer this question? If it's on there, that means that Google already has a bunch of people asking that specific question. If it ends up as a snippet, it's kind of a really good backwards indicator that says, there's a demand to have this question answered on your website if it's something that you should be addressing. The other cool thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, even in the SEO space, if you dive even deeper to the next level, is those long tail keyword snippets and questions. Those are also what really feeds voice recognition. So voice recognition software and things like when you're asking Alexa a question, you ask Siri, it does go through a little bit of a different algorithm to where you can get things brought to your site because you're doing it in a more natural question and answer kind of way versus just putting a keyword inside a blog. So it's just something to think about as you're thinking of your SEO strategy and how you're rewriting sites. The other thing that I would say is on blogs, because at a certain point, blogs were super, super important. It was like, because the whole thing was Google needs fresh content. Google needs fresh content. So SEO agencies and digital marketing agencies were all, that was like, that was one of the no-brainer things, or like for X amount of hundreds of dollars, we'll write blogs and keep your thing updated. And it has value, and it is true that Google likes fresh, unique content. But when you're doing it without any sort of a strategy and you're just putting blogs up to like the top 5 things for this, that's great, unless you want to have real power in it, which what we do what's called like a cluster page approach. So we'll have 3 blogs that are targeting specific keywords in conjunction with a social media post over here and a media post over here. And like a webinar here would be something like you could link to for SEO, and you would link that if that was your thing, to tie all those puzzle pieces together. And then the other thing that we would do is we would have owners, if they are answering a Google review, drop a couple keywords in the review, like, hey, John, thanks for letting us, put your dentist sign up when you need your car wrap done. We'd love to help you out. And it's it's very natural thing. But what Google does, Google says, they said car wrap, they're a sign company. Next time someone asks about how much does a car wrap cost, I'm going to put them in the running to boost up in the ranking. So there's all these little, it's like a spider web, and you have to connect the dots and play detective. And the interesting thing is Google does not lay out the framework for you. It doesn't say these are the 10 things exactly that you need to do, but we've kind of reverse engineered it, as an SEO industry enough to know, hey, these specific things are super important, right? We know like location, proximity. If I'm searching Chinese restaurant, best Chinese restaurant, it's not going to give me one in New York, even if that's the best Chinese restaurant, because it's like, hey, you're down in Florida, let's get you one closer to you that you can actually eat at tonight, So
Yeah.
there's certain indicators that they're looking for that you can piggyback off of and utilize.
That's great. It's kind of like in marketers terms too, like an area takeover. If you're going to do an area takeover, you're doing billboards, yard signs, PPC. So
Exactly.
You can think of SEO like that as well. The digital world is your playground. And it's funny you mentioned like best Chinese restaurants near me. Yeah, Google is so kind and tells me where I am, whereas Uber Eats doesn't. So I have sent many a food to an old apartment. So I just like, you're welcome if you're listening and used to live in Boston.
That's right.
That's a lot of free meals.
Enjoy it.
So now we've got the brand roll up. And now we're dealing with franchisees who are like, you can't even get them to spend on a direct mail or a, PPC. How the heck are you going to get them to do SEO? Especially because, like myself, I am a marketing person. I guarantee you my businesses don't have the best SEO, or it's not being worked on nearly enough. And that's, case in point. So for franchisee and corporate owned units, here's why it's important, because this is what is going to win you local customers. So whether you're spending $10,000 or you're spending none, if your SEO is on point, you should still be getting customers. You should be getting traffic. People should be looking at you and are looking for you. The better your SEO is, and also the better your paid ads and conversion stats will be. A couple times I've seen, great companies come up far down on the page. And then as soon as I do my research, I realize, oh, they're actually legit, and vice versa. I see an ad and then I go to their page and they've got one review. I'm like, okay. So they do work hand in hand. It helps the franchise brand grow as a whole. So for franchisors, it's super important to be pushing this down on your franchisees, because they're kind of like your children. Like if they do well, the whole family does well. And also provides, to Chad's point, consistency and linking. So if they're adding keywords in their reviews, responses, and they're linking back to, blogs and websites, it's all growing in power. It also encourages your franchisees to stay digitally active. It's not enough anymore to tell your franchisees, you have to post, the algorithm wants you to post. If you tell them there's a legitimate, quantifiable reason for posting outside of just getting clients or spending money, they're going to be more apt to do it. Social media and reviews have an impact on SEO, as we covered. And it really is an inexpensive way to increase brand awareness. A lot of people think brand awareness is you're wearing t-shirts or you're spending lots of money on social media and not getting ads. Well, this is a very free or inexpensive way to counter that, so that you can then spend more of your money on the conversion ads, such as Google, and utilize brand awareness through SEO. So saving, a couple hundred to thousands of dollars right on there. And the perception is, and this is kind of natural to us, but the higher the ranking, the more local customers you're going to win, because the perception is that the first position is associated with the strongest brands. They're well known, they're popular, they're relevant. And to me, I truly believe that I needed a carpet cleaner the other day. And I felt like as I was going down because of availability issues, I was going to get worse and worse service. While that might not be true, that's literally how I thought about it. By the time I got to like 6 or 7, I was like, forget it. I'll just wait another month. So if I'm thinking it, your customers are thinking it. And again, keywords are the heart of search intent and your customer. 46% of all searches have local intent. I would even venture to say that's more in the franchise space. And this is kind of how they all work together. So Chad, talk to me about how you teach your teams and your franchisees about the importance of local SEO, and how do you get them to do it?
So you're right. The part of the challenge is, they're a new business owner. You kind of get them in for training. You send them out into the world, and SEO is not on their mind. Like, right. They've got bills to pay. They got to hire staff. They got to take care of clients. The shipment didn't come in on time, like whatever it is, there's other things. So we try to kind of bulletproof it the best that we can while they're here at training. So like for all of our brands, that basically have either a location page or a microsite that's attached to their umbrella brand. So we kind of show them how to get into the back end, that we give them power to edit it into. We want to give them them or an agency, if they choose to use, the power to go in and edit and to do these keyword changes for what's right in their area. Because even just the language or the pictures or things like that are going to be different, right? Like if you're in Alabama, right, you're going to have a different language and a way that you're going to speak than if you're in New York or in California. So you want to cater to your customers and let them know, like, this is why we're awesome. We're your people. We serve you. So you want to give them that ability to kind of, while within brand guidelines, obviously to do that, you got to be careful. But the other thing is, and it's kind of funny, you had it on the Made Pro site, but something as simple as kind of name checking the counties and the cities and the areas that you serve in a natural way. Like it's one of the most basic, like it's literally like one quick paragraph that you put in that for the rest of the life of that business, anchors Google is just a kind of placeholder that says, oh, someone in, Palm Beach County is searching for a maid. And I noticed on that location page, they mentioned that particular county. So it kind of helps Google do its job of matchup. It's really helpful if you have a franchise company that's like a service company that moves around, right? Like if you have a roofing company and you serve like 7 different cities, but you're located in one, and you want to get the business for all those cities, then you kind of have to use that strategy to help you kind of get some SEO juice going in all those areas. But yeah, while they're here in training, we try to help them and we'll hold their hand and do it for them, or with them, I should say. We want them to kind of have that so that stuff's kind of set up. The other thing we do is we do a 2-pronged approach on social media, because as you pointed out, all the algorithms favor any post that an owner does at a store level. But we want to make sure, like in our ad funds, we'll pay for agencies to post like 3 times a week on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or all those major places, so that if the owner, again, gets tied up in business, goes on vacation, just is super busy because they're doing so great, doesn't post anything on Facebook for 3 weeks, and then someone like you as a consumer looking for a carpet cleaning company or comparing, because we all compare, right? And say, well, they haven't posted anything in like a month. Are they still in business? And the other one has like 3 jobs they did this week with pictures. Who you naturally, your brain goes ding, ding, I'm going over in this direction. So we want to help them the best we can. It's always a struggle just because there's just more to them. There are more important things to do. For us, this is like, we know the value of, you do this now, you get leads later, whereas right now you're out there trying to get business to stay in business. And like, this is the foundation that could get you that business to stay in business.
Exactly. It's kind of like the franchise fee. Like, we know why it's important. We know where the money is. For them, they're like, what do you mean I have to cut you a check for $40,000?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But also to your point, I am the queen of just the worst, like most annoying metaphors, but they make sense. So what I like to say for like the posting and the SEO is, everyone's walked up to a strip mall at some point, or a cluster of businesses, and you see that business and it looks nice, but the lights are off. They might not have an open sign. You're like, ooh, they go out of business.
Feels sketchy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little scary. I'm out. Like, that's definitely a drug front for sure. Or you walk up and the lights are on. There's people in there. They're moving. Maybe there's a couple customers. You're like, I'm going to check it out now, or I'm going to check it out sometime.
Yeah.
That is the same thing when people are visiting your Google page, your Facebook page, and you're not active. Like, that's how it is these days. I know it stinks, but that's what's happening.
Well, I mean, the other thing I would just add to that is your last point, that the cost, right? So, Facebook ads, those cost money. Facebook posts don't cost any money, right? Other than the time to create it. Maybe I'd take a picture if you're doing video or something like that. But as far as a brand awareness campaign, like, that versus having to put a billboard on a highway, which might get more eyeballs, but guess what? There's more eyeballs on Facebook. So like to not do it just makes 0 sense at all from every angle possible. Yeah. And your analogy with a business, I like to point out when we talk about Facebook and keeping the excitement going. I said, every mall that has an Apple store has this exact same experience. You walk through and you're like, there's a store. They all seem typical. And then you walk by the Apple store, there's an excitement. There's a line out the thing that is packed every single time. And you're like, I want to go in there. I want to be part of this party. I don't even know what's going on. Like, but something here, like everybody knows, but me, I need to get in on this. So you want that same kind of experience and feel. And we've all seen it where people that do a really good job on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, and they're just kind of, they keep popping up in front of you. And maybe you weren't interested at all, but suddenly you get to a certain breaking point where they break you down right on the marketing, and you go, all right, what's the deal with this? I'll bite.
Like
right?
me on LinkedIn, just that girl in the pink friggin' jacket won't shut up. And then
what is she saying?
What is it now?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's true. I mean, your Apple store is to my like McDonald's. Like, I used to travel all over the world. And listen, your girl gets food poisoning. I've got allergies. But every time I saw McDonald's, I was like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not going to starve. So you want to bring that comfort and that familiarity, and bringing it back a little bit. So one of the biggest components to SEO is making sure that all of your listings are up to date. They've got the correct phone number. Your franchisee knows they have them. They're getting reviews. And another, quick tactical tip is for your brand, and I know this varies depending on if you're Chuck in the truck or brick and mortar, what have you, but a lot of times what our franchisor did is technically we'd have, one territory, but they would open up 3 Facebook pages. And now with Google not needing a physical address, open up 3 areas. And so we would have FlyFo Norristown, FlyFo Plymouth Meeting, just to help that SEO and tag it, even though it's technically one owner, one location. It helps with that kind of SEO boost and people searching in local areas. So that's just a quick tip as well. So now, this is, another example. This is my family, and we have a Men in Kilts where all the techs wear kilts as they're cleaning windows. I was talking to Chad earlier. We just hired a bunch of like college wrestlers, and they're currently at my house all in kilts trying to learn how to wash a window. And it's a fiasco over here. But for your franchisees that say, well, I don't know how to write, I don't have time for this, they're at some point or another, they are in their business. So digitize everything. I made the family wear the kilts to this like festival that we were going to, took some pictures, posted it on Facebook, and tagged the business and wrote the locations we're in. That is as simple as it needs to be. It doesn't need to be this full-on brand. Just everything that has to do with your business, try and digitize it, because that's the easiest way for franchisees to create content, is just to document their regular life.
I would add to that too, like that's a great example that we kind of talked to our owners about. That took you what, 5 minutes?
Maybe.
All together, literally 5 minutes. And if you took a bunch of pictures from this event, you could use them all year long at different things. Exactly. And I think a lot of franchises get really caught up in like, it has to be this awesome high-end graphic design, or what's the latest trend or this. But I look at this, like I look at that picture on the left. If I were hiring windows, it's done. Like I'm in. I'm seeing it's a family business. It's a family thing. It's fun. I've got a kid, so I'm feeling the love kind of thing. And it conveys all that with one image. Like, you know what I mean? Right. So it doesn't have to be something like crazy rocket science marketing. Sometimes the most simple things work. I would say actually the simplest things, the more human things work way better than anything else. That's why we kind of preach to our owners, like you have to post from your store. Like we have one of our brands fully promoted that does promotional materials. And I always tell them, like, it's like literally you have people picking up really cool things branded all day long. Like this would be a perfect example. If Men in Kilts were coming to pick up their t-shirts that fully promoted made, all they'd have to do is do a quick picture holding it up, the guy in the kilt, and we made their shirts. And it helps the business. It helps with promoted. Boom, done. It takes 5 minutes. So
exactly. And another tip is, if you have kids or your franchisees have kids, make them hand the business cards out, because it's a lot less creepy. You're not going to say no.
You can't say no.
Like, here you go. Yeah. So I know Chad and I both have a hard stop at too, because we're very important people.
We have to do the work, like we said that we talked
you
about.
have to do the work. I'm just important for no reason. No, here's some tactical tips you can implement now. Starting with measuring your current SEO performance. So this is, doing a full audit of what's out there. Google doesn't like duplicate content. Do you have duplicate blogs? That sort of stuff. The squeaking you hear is my toddlers who just came home. And there are tools out there available, such as SEMrush, Moz, Google Trends and Analytics, that are very, very good for helping you gather all of this information, such as detailing out your keywords. What are the best ones? What are ranking high? Ranking your competitors. SEMrush has a whole, program for that. So utilize the tools you have and measure where you are now. You don't have to be a brand new franchise. You don't have to start fresh. Just wherever you are, you can build on that. The next, build out SEO focused content, as Chad and I talked about, short form, long form, blog, social media, wherever you can put a keyword, a location, do it. It is going to build on itself. Optimize your on-page SEO. So make sure whoever's managing your website, title tags, meta descriptions, H1, H2, H3 tags. I'm talking like I even know what those are. I don't, but I know that they're done on our website because the person who does our website, you know, figures it out and does it. Just whoever needs to do it, do it. Doesn't have to be you. And then create a plan for off-page SEO. And what that means is outbound links and inbound links. So the links that are linking back to you, Google loves that. It makes them feel like you're legit, you know what you're talking about, people like you. So that's through digital PR, you know, getting out on the helper reporter out, get as many links out there as possible. So the more links and they will build over time. And of course, if you have the budget, you can always hire an internal person or a vendor such as NetSertive. We're good at this, to do your SEO for you. But again, no matter what, it is important. Chad, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say two things just to tag on to that. The optimize the on-page SEO. That's one of those, I don't want to say like a no-brainer, or I would say that's one of those things where there's no reason not to. You have to. Image tags, title tags, meta descriptions. This is like website business 101. If whoever's doing your site isn't doing this, you might want to find a new agency or nudge them and say you need to do the whole job. And it's really easy to check this stuff on the back end. You can just do an inspect in any website and do it, or have an agency. One thing that we like to do is we'll have another agency audit our sites that didn't build it, because they're looking for every little nook and cranny going, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, because they want the business, right? So they're going to help us find things that maybe we missed, our agency missed, to help us tighten it up. And we might find a new agency that does a better job because of it. So we have no problem doing that. The other thing I will just leave off with on the PR side, we do a lot of PR. One thing that you will have to notice, we want those legacy links. So make sure you're working with news service organizations that leave the links up forever. A lot of times they'll leave them up for 3 months or 6 months, and then they just take the URL disappears. If like the cheaper sites will do that, like the $99 press release places, they'll put it out there and you kind of link to it, and then grand opening for your store, and then everything disappears after a while. If you are using those, just duplicate that grand opening on your site or somewhere else so that it lives forever, so that you keep that SEO juice. Because all those little links, like you said, they kind of from the location pages and the microsites, we call it, to use our final analogy, right? We call it like all boats rise, right? Like the tide rises all the boats up together. If everybody kind of does this, it builds better brand awareness, and that just helps every owner that adds on in the future, makes it a better investment for them.
Totally. And you just think of an avalanche, that it starts with one snowflake, baby.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
You're buried. So that is definitely the goal there. Before we've got a few minutes left. You had a final analogy. I got an analogy with a picture. Right. Think of it as tortoise and the hare, because your SEO is the tortoise. He's boring, but he's slow and steady. And then of course you've got the cute rabbit, which is your paid ads that, sprint, stop, sprint, stop, sprint, stop. Not necessarily one's going to win over the other, but when it comes down to, what you really want to focus on, you can do a sprint all day and stop, but that's not going to matter if you don't have, your foundation. So while they should work in tandem, the tortoise is important. The tortoise is important. So we'll leave it up to see if anyone has any final questions for us. Again, NetSertive will do free audits and don't worry, because when I signed on with NetSertive, I said, look, I'm not selling. Don't make me sell. I'm bad at it. I'll give everything away for free, but I'm happy to do an audit, talk to you about things. You know, one of my passions is helping franchisors, because I kind of went to the dark side and now I'm on a supplier. But that's good for you. So, you know, whether it's you want to start from scratch, you want to keep talking, you have questions, definitely reach out and we'll send you a link as well. Chad, again, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. You spent a lot of time and effort learning these things. So definitely connect with him on LinkedIn, guys. And I will, if anyone has any other questions, we will for sure see you soon.
Thanks so much, Maddie. I appreciate it.
Thank
It's been
you.
fun.